So Juliette, you grew up with a French mom.
And dad.
And dad. So both your parents are from
Martinique.
What is that
They say
influence?
I'm an original French Creole.
You turn that word upside down because you are truly the
I'm
original.
an original French
What
Creole.
is it like growing up with French parents in Trinidad?
Well, it's an immigrant story.
Yeah.
In a world full of immigrant stories.
Yeah.
So they always want better for their kids.
Yeah.
So my parents came to Trinidad on boats. Yes, my mother used to sell things on the wharf.
Wow.
Yeah, they used to come on weekends and on the little boats that came from Martinique. And then my father's sister got a job at the Normandy Hotel. And then they told them, you should come to Trinidad because it's the land of the future. And they both arrived. My mother used to press people's hair with a coal pot and an actual press, and used to go to people's homes and press people's hair. And then my father used to make furniture. That's how they started. We used to live in Laventille on Trotman Lane in Laventille. We had a furniture factory there. And then they continued to be business people. So I grew up in a house of French immigrant business
That's
people.
so interesting because when we think of migration to Trinidad and Tobago, we think of the motherland. So migrants coming from
Correct.
Africa, India, China, but we don't think really of people coming from the Caribbean, the French West
From
Indies.
the French West
Did they love Trinidad?
Well, my father had just come back from the war, and my mother had one child, my eldest sister, and they basically had nothing. So therefore, coming to Trinidad was the future. They had come from absolutely nothing. There was nothing to lose, and that's freedom.
Yeah, that is freedom.
So they came to Trinidad.
I want to leapfrog from that story because your mother's influence in starting up this amazing space that we're in was just really strong.
Absolutely.
Tell us something about that.
Well, I was at school in Paris. I'd been there for like 7 years. I was working in Germany and different places. I'd gone to baking school in Paris, and she called me and she said, there's this mall that's opening down in West Moorings. I didn't even know where West Moorings was. And I think you should have a spot there. And she says, and I'm going to get you one. And I was like, okay. And she came here and they offered her, as they were offering everybody else who was in food, a spot in what was the food court. And she insisted at that time that that was not where I belonged and I needed to have a spot entirely of my own.
How did the owners of Westmore even listen to her?
Because she's a lady like that. You do not listen to Madame Petite. Everybody will tell you that. So therefore they listened to her and they gave her this spot.
So right in this spot is where you were originally located 37 years ago?
Correct, absolutely. Yes, 37 years ago.
And you were in France at the time?
I was in France at the time.
And when you heard, so you were in culinary school?
I was already working. I was working at the Hilton in Paris. I was already working.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a story in and of by itself.
Yeah, that's an interesting story, working in a man's world.
So she calls you and tells you about this spot, and your response is?
Okay, let's do this. Because I mean, it was always about opening business, because I come from a business family.
Yeah.
Not that all of my brothers and sisters are in business, but you come from a family of business. It's very different from people who work 9 to 5. Your thinking is different. The way that you move forward is not the same. You make your way. Yeah. So it's a different mentality, and I grew up in a house where everybody sort of made their way.
But it's also coming from the world of entrepreneurship, one, but also I think too, having this amazing experience. You talked about working in Paris and in Germany and in Europe, and having this amazing experience and bringing that to here.
At the time, it was now it's nothing new, but at the time it was. And a lot of people didn't think that it would succeed, because many people thought that Trinidadians would not embrace the culture of having tea and sitting down and having coffee, and the whole cafe lifestyle was not something that was considered. But it worked.
So entrepreneurship is one thing, but also I think what you were bringing to the table, of course, was this whole wonderful experience you were having in Europe, working in Paris and Germany and all the other places.
Well, what you learn when you live in a culture of food is the way that people embrace food, which is different to what we knew at the time. So it was more of an idea of introducing the concept of the time for food. The pause that food requires, and it was part of the culture that I had grown accustomed to.
In Paris
and in Germany and throughout Europe.
But you've grown accustomed to an idea of, let's say, even a cafe, but it's popular now, but back then, who even thought of having afternoon tea, or perhaps the upper crust did, but you...
But the thing about it is that most people did not necessarily think that it would work. And as the years went by, you had to introduce new things in order to continue to make it relevant.
Yeah.
But I guess we had the blessing of being the first, because there were French bakeries at the time. There was Chez Georges, and people had known about Jacqueline's, because I remember as a child I had grown up with them bringing the
Jacqueline's
things from
is that
Jacqueline's.
old? Wow!
From Jacqueline's patisserie
Yeah.
to the house, and there was Chez Georges, whom everybody knew
Yeah.
as well, Georges Loquet, but there was that concept of you being able to purchase it and take it home. So this was the first time, I believe, I could be wrong, that people were going to be able to come in and sit down and experience the whole.
Was that your idea or your mother's idea?
Well, no, it was it had to be a restaurant. It had to have the concept of seating, because otherwise it would just be another food outlet.
Yeah.
And that was not what we wanted. And I think that's what they understood when they suggested to us that we would go to the food court, because it was understood that it would be another outlet of just something where you come and you purchase over the counter. But we wanted more than that. I wanted more than that.
You said things changed, and over the years you had to find out what was really the recipe that would make things work and have customers coming back and telling their friends and family, and you would mushroom. What are some of the things that you had to tinker with to make this a success?
Well, we had to do more than just sweet. We had to get into a lot more savory, because people wanted to have an option at lunchtime. So you're not going to come at lunchtime and have an eclair. You're going to need to have something. So we got into the salads and the sandwiches, and then we went into pretty much of a full-blown cafe-style menu, light lunches, good quality stuff. That takes a little while to come out because we're part of the slow food movement.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, so it takes a little time because it's slow. We make it as you order it. And we've just expanded on that, and then we started to do a lot of funky cakes and character cakes and things that we had never done before, that I had never really learned how to do.
Yeah.
And we learned things as we went along, and then we started doing things like cookies and chocolates, and it just grows into stuff that people grow more and more accustomed to.
You have this wonderful talent. You're coming back from Paris, and you're setting up this space. But I know, having spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs, that the people who you surround yourself by, the people who are around you, they really contribute to this space. How have you had success stories with your staff and just the talent and the skill set that you needed to keep this going?
Well, you have to have people who are committed to doing work well, and I tell people I can teach anybody to do anything once they're willing to learn.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to teach people to do things the right way. And of course, once you have those who are at the head, who understand the culture and understand the brand, then it becomes a little bit less complicated.
Yeah.
I'm not saying easy, but a little less complicated. As years have gone by, it becomes increasingly difficult, and everyone in the restaurant industry will tell you that the human resource aspect is the
I
most
think that would be in every industry.
That's correct.
Juliette, in every industry. I think that is the bane of the entrepreneur's success or failure.
That's correct. So, but it is something that you are going to have to work with, because customers demand service. They've got so much choice, and I think that we travel a lot. We are people who are people tell you about Nobu, and they go to the finest restaurants in the world, and they go to them, and they're accustomed to service. And I think if you get anywhere close to that, then you are delivering something that you got to try with every day. I tell people once the door is open, it's like game face on, and it's like you got to show up every day, and you got to do what needs to be done every day.
And you're opening a new door, and one would think that you have this beautiful space. I'm sure you're doing other endeavors in which you're successful, and now you're going to do something that's related, but also an entirely new business. What made you want to do the Baking Academy?
I ask myself that question every day now. But I always thought it was the next chapter. I always thought it was important to leave a legacy of learning. And I thought that this was the way to do that. I thought it was my contribution. I thought it was time to step up, and in an industry that I've been involved in a very long time, and I can see where the shortcomings continue to be, and I thought it was important for me to contribute in some way to try to make it better.
We forgot to mention, let's define the Baking Academy? What is it?
What is it?
In its essence?
Well, it is a place of learning. Mm-hmm. It is a place where we are hoping to be able to create the type of environment where people can come and get actual hands-on learning by very solid professionals in a state-of-the-art facility. Mm-hmm. So we have created these certificate programs that were created by strong industry, or people of strong reputation out of New York, and I was able to encounter them, and we met and we discussed what I wanted, and we therefore created these programs in baking and pastry arts, bread making, and cake making, but following very much the French traditions of baking and pastry making. Yeah. But it provides someone with more of a hands-on experience. I think it's important that you learn to do things by doing them. Mm-hmm. The theory is there and the understanding comes with the doing. Yeah. So we have created far more hands-on training, far more, so it works along the line of someone who is interested in actually the physical preparation of things can come to a facility where they are able to learn to do things well.
So it's really about creating a legacy of learning.
Of learning.
Yeah.
I think we need it because we love to eat, but we have to learn to do it the right way. Yeah. We have to learn to prepare things well. There's an eclair. It's an eclair. It's not
like it's basic chocolate and top cream base.
No, but there's an essence to the item, and we've got to learn to do them properly. Yeah. So a lot of people make puffs, and you wonder, well, what is that? Yeah. It is not what it is supposed to be. Yeah. It is what someone may have created from having, but that is not the way that it is supposed to be done. And we are attempting with the Academy to create the proper technique and the real learning so that people do things and do them.
Yeah. So my final question is, if you can define, having built Le Jardin, going into new venture with the Baking Academy, how do you define success?
Oh my gosh, we're so far away from success. We're very concerned with success. I think success comes after you've done it well. I think a lot of people go into things and think, I'm going to be successful. But I'm not sure that is necessarily the way that it works. I think you've got to, and people define success. You can think of a million things, but your customer defines your success because they're the ones who's going to have to buy into it. So you can imagine a million things. The Baking Academy has not necessarily gone the way that I have imagined it. It is still being formulated by the people who come. Yeah. And your customers and you are relevant only insofar as others make you relevant. Because I could think the world of it. But if no one is interested in embracing what I have created, then it can't be a success. So does that make me not successful? I'm not sure. Yeah. Does that make you not successful? It's a question that you wrestle with as you go through many parts of being an entrepreneur. Elon Musk, I mean, I look at Oprah. Oprah was somebody that I never really liked until I got into the Baking Academy. Because I remember when she went off to open her own studio, nobody thought it would work. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure she
and it didn't at first.
It didn't at
first. So she had to
She had to rethink
her model.
And that's what to me, that defines success. When I look at someone by the name like Elon Musk, who is willing to risk everything that he has for the things that he believes can work, then is that success? Suppose it doesn't work and he loses everything. Is he a failure? I'm not sure how it works. So I'm not sure how to define that. I don't have an answer to that yet.